What if not every soul was meant to awaken in the same way? What if the reason some people feel an inner call, while others feel nothing at all, was already described thousands of years ago and later buried? Why do some individuals sense that this world feels wrong, artificial, or incomplete, while others accept it without question? And what if this difference was not a failure of faith, but a fundamental distinction of the soul itself? The ancient Gnostics believed that humanity was not spiritually equal in the way modern religion teaches. According to their hidden texts, there were different types of souls walking the same world, sharing the same bodies, yet connected to reality in completely different ways. Some were deeply trapped in matter, some were capable of questioning, and a rare few carried a divine spark that could truly awaken. This idea was considered dangerous, unsettling, and deeply threatening to systems built on control and uniform belief. If you look at the image before you, you can already sense this division. One figure is bowed in darkness, heavy and confined, as if unaware of anything beyond the material world. Another stands between light and shadow, split, searching, suspended between sleep and awakening. And the last is bathed in radiant light, aligned, lifted, connected to something far beyond this reality. The Gnostics would say these are not artistic metaphors, but spiritual states of the soul itself. Why was this teaching hidden, labeled heretical, and erased from mainstream doctrine? Why were the texts that described these soul types burned, buried, or rewritten? And most importantly, where do you fit within this ancient map of consciousness? The answers may be uncomfortable, but they may also explain feelings you've carried your entire life without words. If you feel drawn to uncovering truths that were hidden, distorted, or forgotten, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. What you are about to hear is not meant to convince you, but to help you remember something very old. To understand why the Gnostics spoke of different types of souls, we must first understand what they believed had gone wrong with spiritual truth. In the ancient world, before religion became centralized and institutionalized, spirituality was often about direct experience. People sought knowledge not only through belief, but through inner awakening. This is where the word Gnosis comes from. It means knowing, not believing, knowing through direct inner realization. The Gnostics believed that over time, this direct path was replaced by systems that valued obedience over understanding. According to their view, the church and other power structures simplified spiritual reality into a single narrative. All souls are the same. All must follow the same rules, and salvation comes only through external authority. But the Gnostics saw this as a distortion. They believed reality was far more complex, and that human souls were not all at the same stage of awareness. In several Gnostic texts, including writings associated with Valentinian traditions, humanity is described as being divided into three categories. This was not meant as an insult or a hierarchy of worth, but as an explanation of why spiritual messages affect people so differently. Have you ever wondered why some people hear spiritual ideas and feel nothing, while others feel deeply shaken? The Gnostics believed this was because souls are oriented differently toward truth. The first type of soul, according to Gnostic teaching, is deeply bound to the material world. This soul experiences reality almost entirely through the senses. Survival, pleasure, fear, status, and routine define its life. This soul is not evil or bad. It is simply asleep. And Gnostics believe this soul accepts the world as it appears and rarely questions its origin or purpose. When confronted with deeper spiritual ideas, this soul often feels discomfort, boredom, or rejection. Does that sound familiar when you think about people around you? The second type of soul exists in tension. This soul feels divided. It senses that something is wrong with the world, yet it does not fully understand why. It is drawn to religion, philosophy, or spirituality, but often feels confused or conflicted. Sometimes it believes, sometimes it doubts, sometimes it obeys, sometimes it rebels. The Gnostics saw this soul as capable of awakening, but not guaranteed to do so. It stands between sleep and awareness, much like the central figure in the image, split between darkness and light. The third type of soul is the rarest. The Gnostics believe this soul carries a spark of the divine fullness, what they called the pleroma. This soul feels a deep sense of exile in the world. It does not feel at home here. From a young age, it may feel different, disconnected, or restless without knowing why. When exposed to Gnostic teachings, this soul does not merely learn, it remembers. The words feel familiar, as if awakening something ancient inside. Some scholars believe this idea was dangerous because it removed spiritual authority from institutions and returned it to inner knowing. If awakening depends on inner readiness rather than obedience, control becomes difficult. This may explain why these teachings were labeled heretical and erased. As you hear this, ask yourself honestly, which of these descriptions feels closest to your own experience? And why do you think this idea still feels unsettling today? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because reflection is the first step toward understanding. The idea of different types of souls did not come from imagination or later speculation. It emerged from ancient texts that were deliberately hidden, destroyed, or ignored for centuries. For a long time, historians believed Gnosticism was nothing more than a strange heresy described by its enemies. That changed dramatically in 1945, when a collection of ancient manuscripts was discovered near Nag Hammadi in Egypt. These texts, buried in jars, had survived while countless others were burned. Among these writings are the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and the Apocryphon of John. While they differ in style, they share a striking message. Salvation is not universal in the same way for everyone, and awakening depends on knowledge, not blind belief. In these texts, Jesus is not primarily a figure demanding worship, but a revealer of hidden knowledge meant to awaken those who are able to hear it. This alone was enough to challenge centuries of theological structure. In the Apocryphon of John, creation itself is described as flawed. The world is not made directly by the highest divine source, but by a lesser being known as the demiurge. This figure believes itself to be the only God, yet acts without full understanding. According to Gnostic interpretation, this explains why the world contains beauty, but also deep suffering, order, but also cruelty. The soul's reaction to this flawed world reveals its nature. The texts suggest that some souls are fully immersed in the demiurge's creation and accept it as final reality. Others feel an inner conflict, sensing that something beyond this system exists. And a few recognize that the material world is not their true home at all. This is not framed as punishment or reward, but as a state of awareness. Some scholars believe these ideas reflect early attempts to explain why spiritual teachings awaken some people deeply while leaving others unchanged. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says that the kingdom is spread out upon the earth, but people do not see it. This line is central to Gnostic thought. The truth is not hidden in the sky or locked away by gods. It is hidden in plain sight, but only certain souls are capable of perceiving it. This idea aligns directly with the concept of different soul types. The kingdom is present, but perception depends on inner readiness. The Gospel of Philip goes even further, suggesting that ignorance is the root of bondage. It states that those who do not know themselves are enslaved, even if they are outwardly religious. Knowledge, in this sense, is not information. It is awakening. It is the moment when a soul recognizes its divine origin beyond the material world. For the Gnostics, this recognition could not be forced. It could only occur when the soul was capable of receiving it. Why would such texts be suppressed? From a historical perspective, these teachings undermined authority. If salvation comes through inner knowledge rather than obedience, rituals, or intermediaries, institutions lose power. Over time, councils selected which texts were acceptable and which were dangerous. The ones that emphasized hierarchy and obedience survived. The ones that emphasized inner awakening were erased. As you reflect on this, Ask yourself why these ideas feel both ancient and strangely familiar. Do you think all souls hear truth in the same way? Or could it be that awareness itself unfolds differently for each of us? Share your thoughts below, because questioning is exactly what these texts were meant to inspire. To truly grasp why not every soul can awaken in the same way, the Gnostics believed one must understand the nature of the world itself. According to their teachings, the material universe was not created by the highest divine source, but by a lesser intelligence known as the demiurge. This figure is not portrayed as pure evil, but as ignorant, arrogant, and blind to the greater reality beyond itself. It creates systems, laws, and structures, yet believes it is the ultimate authority. In Gnostic texts, the demiurge declares, "I am God, and there is no other." To the Gnostics, this was the ultimate lie. They believed this being ruled the material world along with its helpers, called archons. These archons are described as forces that maintain order, repetition, and control. Some scholars interpret them symbolically as systems of power, fear, and habit. Others see them as metaphysical intelligences. Either way, their function is the same: to keep souls focused outward, distracted, and unaware of their true origin. This worldview explains why awakening is difficult and rare. The Gnostics believe the world itself is designed to produce sleep, daily survival, social pressure, fear of punishment, desire for approval, and attachment to identity all act as chains. For souls deeply embedded in this structure, questioning reality feels threatening. The demiurge's world feels safe because it is familiar. Awakening feels dangerous because it destabilizes identity. This is where the three types of souls become clearer. The most materially bound soul feels at home in the demiurge's creation. It does not experience inner conflict. It follows rules, traditions, and routines without sensing contradiction. For this soul, spiritual ideas are often reduced to moral behavior or social belonging. There is no hunger for hidden truth, because the surface level feels sufficient. The second soul type begins to sense cracks in the system. It notices contradictions between teachings and lived reality. It questions why a supposedly divine world contains so much suffering and injustice. This soul may feel drawn to spiritual teachings, but also confused by them. The archons, in Gnostic language, target this soul most strongly through fear, guilt, and doubt. The battle for awareness happens here. The third soul, however, reacts differently. When exposed to the demiurge's world, it feels alienated. Systems feel artificial. Authority feels hollow. This soul senses that the structures governing reality are not ultimate. The Gnostics believed this soul carried a memory of the divine fullness beyond the material cosmos. When truth is spoken, it resonates deeply, not as new information, but as recognition. This teaching challenges the modern idea that awakening is simply a choice or a matter of effort. According to Gnostic thought, effort alone is not enough. Awareness emerges when a soul is ready to perceive beyond the architecture of sleep. This does not mean one soul is better than another. It means they are oriented differently within the same reality. Ask yourself this: when you look at the systems around you, do they feel natural and unquestionable? Or do they feel constructed and fragile? Do you feel comforted by certainty or unsettled by it? The Gnostics believed your reaction reveals something profound about your soul's orientation. Share what you feel, because awareness begins with honest reflection. One of the most misunderstood ideas in Gnostic thought is the nature of awakening itself. Modern spirituality often presents awakening as a goal anyone can reach through discipline, belief, or effort. The Gnostics saw it very differently. For them, awakening was not something you achieve by trying harder. It was something that happens when a soul recognizes truth at the right moment. This is why they insisted that not every soul awakens in the same way or at the same time. In Gnostic texts, awakening is described as remembrance. The soul does not acquire something new. It recalls something it once knew but forgot. This is why Gnostic teachers spoke in riddles, symbols, and paradoxes. They were not trying to convince everyone. They were trying to speak in a way that would resonate only with those capable of hearing. Jesus, in several Gnostic writings, laughs when his disciples misunderstand him. Some scholars interpret this as a teaching method, not mockery. Truth cannot be explained directly to a sleeping soul. The first type of soul cannot be awakened through explanation. It may listen, but it does not hear. For this soul, teachings remain stories, rules, or metaphors. The Gnostics did not condemn this soul. They believed it simply belonged to the rhythms of the material world. Trying to awaken it prematurely would cause fear or rejection. This idea sharply contrasts with later religious movements that sought universal conversion. A second type of soul is the most conflicted. It can awaken, but it can also retreat. This soul often moves in cycles. Periods of insight are followed by doubt. Moments of clarity are followed by fear. The Gnostics believed this soul requires patience and inner honesty. External pressure, guilt, or authority often push it back into sleep. This may explain why institutional religion focused heavily on obedience rather than understanding. Obedience is easier to manage than awakening. The third type of soul awakens not because it is persuaded, but because something clicks. A phrase, a symbol, or a moment triggers recognition. The Gnostics believed this awakening was irreversible. Once the soul remembers its origin beyond the material world, it cannot fully return to sleep. This does not mean life becomes easy. In fact, many Gnostic texts describe awakening as painful. Seeing the illusion of the world can bring loneliness, grief, and alienation. This is why the Gnostics emphasized secrecy, not to hoard power, but to protect both the teachings and the unready. Revelation was meant for those prepared to receive it. For others, it could cause confusion or despair. In this sense, Gnosticism was not elitist in a social sense, but cautious in a spiritual one. In the image of the three figures, awakening is not shown as a ladder everyone climbs. It is shown as a shift in state. One figure remains bound to the ground. One stands in tension. One rises into light. The Gnostics would say this reflects inner orientation, not moral worth. As you reflect on this, consider your own experiences. Have there been moments when certain ideas suddenly made sense, while years of explanation did nothing? Do you think awakening is something we choose, or something that chooses us? Share your thoughts, because these questions have echoed through centuries for a reason. If the idea of different soul types sounds unsettling today, imagine how dangerous it was in the early centuries of organized religion. The Gnostic view quietly dismantled the foundations of spiritual authority. If awakening depends on inner readiness rather than obedience, then no institution can truly control salvation. If truth is remembered rather than taught, then priests, hierarchies, and rigid doctrines lose their central role. This is one of the deepest reasons why Gnosticism was not merely debated, but actively erased. Traditional religion needed a clear structure. It needed rules that applied to everyone equally, rewards and punishments that could be administered, and a single path that all believers were expected to follow. The Gnostic idea that some souls naturally awaken while others do not disrupted this entire system. It suggested that belief alone was not enough, rituals were not enough, and even moral behavior was not enough. What mattered was inner perception. From the perspective of institutional power, this was impossible to manage. How do you govern people who trust inner knowledge over external authority? How do you enforce doctrine when some individuals claim direct insight? The Gnostics did not reject ethics or community, but they rejected the idea that spiritual truth could be standardized. This made them a threat not because they were violent or rebellious, but because they were uncontrollable. Historical records show that early church leaders accused Gnostics of arrogance and division. They claimed that teaching about different soul types created spiritual inequality. Yet from a Gnostic perspective, pretending all souls were identical created a deeper injustice. It forced people into beliefs that did not resonate with them and labeled questioning as sin. Some scholars believe the language of heresy was used not only to protect doctrine, but to silence a competing understanding of consciousness. Over time, councils decided which texts would define truth and which would be destroyed. The books that survived emphasized obedience, faith, and uniform belief. The ones that spoke of inner awakening, divine sparks, and the illusory nature of worldly power were excluded. The Nag Hammadi texts survived only because someone hid them in the desert, likely knowing they would not be safe otherwise. This suppression shaped how spirituality is understood today. Many people feel guilty for questioning, afraid of doubt, or disconnected from religious language that no longer speaks to them. From a Gnostic point of view, this disconnection is not failure. It may be a sign of a soul that does not resonate with imposed belief. The tragedy, according to Gnostics, is not that people doubt, but that they are taught to fear their own perception. The teaching of the three soul types also explains why religious messages often feel powerful to some and empty to others. It is not always about truth versus falsehood. It is about resonance. A message aligned with obedience speaks strongly to one soul type. A message aligned with inner knowing speaks to another. Conflict arises when one path claims exclusivity. As you consider this, ask yourself why questioning still feels dangerous in many spiritual spaces. Why is doubt treated as weakness rather than curiosity? And why do certain ideas feel liberating rather than threatening to you personally? The Gnostics believed these reactions were not random. They were clues. Leave your thoughts in the comments, because engaging with these questions keeps the search alive. The Gnostics never intended their teachings to remain trapped in ancient manuscripts or lost libraries. They believed these ideas would resurface when humanity reached a point where the old explanations no longer worked. Many scholars argue that this is exactly where we are now. Traditional religious structures are losing authority, not because people have become empty or immoral, but because many feel that the answers they are given no longer match their lived experience. The question the Gnostics asked centuries ago has returned with force. Why do some people awaken to deeper questions while others feel no need to ask them at all? In the modern world, the three types of souls can still be observed, though the language has changed. Some people move comfortably within systems. They trust institutions, routines, and external authority. Stability matters more than questioning. For them, the world feels fundamentally acceptable, even when it is harsh. Gnostic thought would say this is not blindness, but orientation. This soul experiences reality as it is presented and rarely feels compelled to look behind the surface. Others live in constant tension. They feel drawn to meaning, but frustrated by contradictions. They may move between belief systems, spiritual practices, or philosophies, always searching, never fully satisfied. They sense that something is missing, but struggle to name it. The modern world overwhelms this soul with information, noise, and distraction. According to the Gnostics, this soul stands at the threshold. It can awaken, but it can also become lost in endless seeking without remembrance. Then there are those who feel deeply out of place in the world. They may succeed outwardly, yet feel internally disconnected. They may struggle to explain why systems of power, identity, and success feel artificial to them. From a young age, they may have sensed that life was more than survival, more than social roles, more than rules. When they encounter Gnostic ideas, something feels familiar. Not comforting, but clarifying. It feels like someone finally described a quiet truth they never had words for. The Gnostics would say, this is not coincidence. They believed that the divine spark within certain souls responds to recognition. This is why awakening often happens through symbols, stories, or moments rather than logic. A phrase, an image, or a question can trigger more transformation than years of study. This also explains why not everyone who hears the same message reacts the same way. Awareness is not democratic in the sense of uniform experience. It unfolds according to inner readiness. This perspective can be both liberating and unsettling. It removes the pressure to force awakening on others. It also removes the comfort of believing everyone will eventually see things the same way. The Gnostics accepted that some souls are here to experience the world as it is. Some are here to struggle between worlds, and some are here to remember something beyond it. None of these roles were framed as superior or inferior. They were different expressions within the same flawed creation. In practical terms, this teaching invites a different relationship with spirituality. Instead of trying to convert, convince, or correct others, the focus turns inward. The question is no longer, how do I make others see? But what is being revealed to me now? The Gnostics believed that forcing insight creates resistance, while recognizing truth creates resonance. It also changes how one understands doubt. Doubt is not a failure of faith in Gnostic thought. It is often the beginning of awakening. When the second soul type begins to doubt official narratives, myths, or authorities, it is not falling away from truth. It is moving closer to it. This is why doubt was so feared by institutions. Doubt cannot be controlled, and once it starts, it rarely stops at the surface. The idea that not every soul can awaken challenges modern spiritual culture, which often promises universal enlightenment. The Gnostics would respond gently but firmly. Awakening is not a product, not a technique, and not a guarantee. It is a recognition that occurs when the soul is able to perceive beyond the architecture of the world. Trying to awaken everyone may be as misguided as trying to force a seed to bloom before it is ready. As you listen to this, notice your own reaction. Do these ideas feel disturbing, clarifying, or strangely validating? Do you feel resistance, curiosity, or recognition? The Gnostics believed your emotional response matters more than intellectual agreement. Truth does not always feel comforting. Sometimes it feels like loss, because it dissolves illusions we depended on. Ask yourself honestly, have you ever felt that certain truths were hidden in plain sight? Have you sensed that the world rewards obedience more than awareness? Have you wondered why some people feel satisfied with answers that feel incomplete to you? These questions are not accidents. According to Gnostic thought, they arise when a soul begins to remember. Share what resonates with you in the comments, not to prove anything, but to reflect. The Gnostics believed that speaking truth aloud, even tentatively, strengthens awareness. And awareness, once stirred, has a way of continuing its work. When the Gnostics spoke of the three types of souls, they were not trying to create fear or division. They were offering a map, a forgotten map of inner reality that explains why the spiritual path feels so different for each person. Over centuries, this map was erased, simplified, and replaced with a single narrative that claimed everyone walks the same road toward truth. But lived experience keeps contradicting that idea. Some awaken suddenly. Some struggle for years. Some never feel the pull at all. The Gnostics dared to say that this difference is not a mistake. According to their vision, the tragedy of the world is not that people are sinful, but that many are asleep inside a system designed to keep them distracted. The material world, governed by repetition, fear, and identity, constantly pulls attention outward. Most souls learn to survive within it, to adapt, to obey, and to seek comfort. And for many, this is enough. The Gnostics did not see this as failure. They saw it as a stage of experience. But for others, something never fully settles. No matter how stable life becomes, there is a quiet dissatisfaction. No matter how convincing the answers sound, they feel incomplete. These souls often blame themselves. They think they are broken, ungrateful, or confused. Gnostic teaching offers a radically different explanation. It says this discomfort may be memory, a faint echo of a deeper origin that does not belong to this world. The most dangerous idea the Gnostics introduced was not the demiurge, the archons, or even the illusion of the material world. It was the idea that truth responds to recognition, not obedience. That knowledge awakens the prepared, but passes through the unready without effect. This idea removes spiritual authority from external structures and places it within the inner state of the soul. That is why it was silenced. Over time, Religion became about belief instead of knowing, about rules instead of insight, about conformity instead of awakening. The language of mystery was replaced with certainty. Questions were replaced with answers. The Gnostics believed that when mystery dies, awakening becomes rare, not because truth disappears, but because the soul no longer listens inward. In this light, the three types of souls are not labels, but lenses. They help explain why the same world produces such different inner reactions. Why some people feel safe inside systems, while others feel suffocated by them. Why some are content with inherited answers, while others feel compelled to search. And why certain teachings feel threatening to some and liberating to others. This also explains why awakening often feels lonely. If not every soul is oriented toward remembrance, then those who awaken may find fewer companions who truly understand their experience. The Gnostics warned about this. They wrote about isolation, grief, and the pain of seeing through illusions that others still depend on. Awakening was never presented as an escape into bliss. It was presented as clarity, and clarity carries a cost. Yet the Gnostics believed that remembering truth, even quietly, mattered. Each awakened soul weakened the power of illusion, not by rebellion, but by awareness. Not by fighting the world, but by no longer mistaking it for ultimate reality. This is why their teachings feel so relevant now. In a world flooded with information but starving for meaning, the question of inner orientation has returned. As you reach the end of this revelation, ask yourself gently, do these ideas feel foreign, or do they feel strangely familiar? Do you feel resistance, or do you feel recognition? The Gnostics would say that your reaction is more important than agreement. Truth does not always arrive as certainty. Sometimes it arrives as unease, curiosity, or a quiet sense of remembering. If this exploration stirred something in you, do not ignore it. Leave a comment and share what resonated, even if you are unsure why. By commenting, you are not just engaging with the video. You are participating in a lineage of seekers who refuse to let buried truths disappear. Like the video if you believe these hidden teachings deserve to be remembered. Subscribe to the channel to continue uncovering what was hidden, distorted, or forgotten. And before you go, sit with these final questions. Are souls equal in value, but different in awareness? Is awakening something we chase, or something that recognizes us when the time is right? And if these teachings survive centuries of silence to reach you now, what does that say about your place in the search for knowledge? The journey does not end here. The ancient Gnostics believed that once a question awakens inside you, it continues to work, quietly, patiently, until the next veil begins to fall.